The night was cold and quiet. Daniel sat alone in his small wooden house, reading an old book by the light of a single lamp. Outside, the wind moved through the trees, making soft, low sounds. He liked nights like this, calm, peaceful, safe. But that night was different. It started with a sound. At first, Daniel thought it was just the wind pushing against the walls. But then it came again, a soft knock, slow and strange. Not like the firm knock of a neighbor, not like the loud bang of a delivery man. It was careful, almost afraid. Daniel put his book down and listened. Silence, then knock. Knock, knock. He felt a small shiver run through his back. No one came to his house at night. He lived far from town, at the edge of a forest, only deer. And foxes came this close, but they didn't knock. He stood and walked to the door. His hand stopped on the handle, for a moment. He thought about turning off the lamp and pretending no one was home. But the knocking came again. This time, it was softer, weaker, almost like a plea. Daniel opened the door a little. Cold air rushed in, touching his face. Outside, under the dim porch light, a tall figure stood. It was wrapped in some kind of dark cloth, torn and wet from the snow. The figure was shaking badly. Its eyes glowed faintly, catching the light in a strange way. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. This was not a human. The figure held something in its arms. Wrapped in another piece of cloth, it stepped forward. And Daniel instinctively stepped back. The figure's voice was low and broken, words struggling to form. "Please, save my baby," it said. The voice was filled with pain, fear, and something else, desperation, before Daniel could speak. The figure bent down and placed the bundle at his feet. Then, without another word, it turned and ran into the darkness. Its steps were quick but unsteady, disappearing into the trees. The night swallowed it whole. Daniel stood frozen, his heart beating fast. He looked down at the bundle. It moved slightly, a soft sound coming from inside. He knelt and pulled the cloth back just a little. Two big, bright eyes stared up at him. They were not human eyes. Too large, too deep, glowing faintly blue. The small face was pale, the skin smooth and almost shining under the porch light. It was breathing, but weakly. Daniel could feel the cold coming from its tiny body. His first thought was to call someone, the police, the hospital, anyone. But then he remembered the look in the mother's eyes. She had trusted him, a stranger with her child. If he called the authorities, what would they do? Would they help? Or would they take the baby away and maybe never give it back? The baby let out a weak, trembling cry. It was hungry. Daniel could hear it in the sound. He picked up the bundle, feeling how light it was. The baby's skin was icy cold. He quickly brought it inside, closing the door to keep the freezing wind. Out he set the baby gently on his old couch, wrapping it in a warm blanket. He rushed to the kitchen, poured some milk into a small cup, and warmed it. When he brought it back, the baby looked at the cup with confusion. It didn't seem to know what to do. Daniel took a spoon, dipped it into the milk, and slowly brought it to the baby's lips. The baby blinked, then took the milk. It made a soft humming sound, almost like a little song. Daniel smiled, though he still felt the fear deep inside. What was this child? Where had it come from? And why had the mother chosen him? Outside, the wind blew harder. Daniel checked the door twice, making sure it was locked. But he couldn't stop thinking about the tall figure that had vanished into the forest. Was she still out there? Was she safe? Would she come back? The baby finished the milk and closed its eyes. It seemed calmer now. Daniel sat beside the couch, watching the small chest rise and fall. The strange hum was still there, soft and steady. It wasn't just a sound, it felt like something alive, like it was touching the air in the room. Daniel leaned back in his chair. His quiet life had just changed forever. He didn't know if this was the beginning of danger or the start of something else. But he knew one thing. He couldn't let anything happen to this child, no matter what. Daniel sat in the dim light, watching the small alien baby sleep. Its tiny chest rose and fell slowly. The soft hum it made filled the room like a quiet song. He had never heard a sound like it before. It was not human, but it was peaceful, almost comforting. He knew he had a choice to make. His mind was racing. He could call the police, tell them what happened, and hand the baby over. Or he could keep this child hidden, protect it, and risk everything. The smart choice would be to call for help. But when he remembered the alien mother's glowing eyes and trembling voice, something inside him refused. She had not trusted the police, the government, or anyone else. She had trusted him. Why? He didn't know, but he could not betray that trust. Daniel leaned forward, looking closely at the baby's face. Its skin was smoother than glass, almost glowing faintly in the light. Its small hands twitched now and then. It looked fragile, helpless, yet it was alive, and that meant it needed care, warmth, and food. Suddenly, the baby made a weak, high-pitched sound. Its eyes opened, wide and bright like twin moons. Daniel could see hunger in them. He quickly went to the kitchen again. He warmed more milk, this time pouring it into a clean bottle. When he returned, the baby reached for it with surprising speed. It drank slowly, staring up at him. Daniel felt a strange connection, like the baby was studying him, trying to understand if he was friend or foe. After feeding, the baby's hum grew stronger. Daniel felt the vibration in the air. It was like the sound carried a message, but one he couldn't understand. He sat back, running his hand through his hair. "What am I doing?" he whispered to himself, but deep inside, he already knew he was going to keep the baby safe, no matter the cost. The next morning, Daniel woke early. The baby was still asleep, wrapped in the blanket outside. The ground was covered with fresh snow. He opened the door quietly and stepped out. That's when he noticed the footprints. They were unlike any he had ever seen. Long, narrow, with strange pointed tips. They led from the edge of the forest right to his front door. And there was only one set, the mother's. Daniel followed the prints a few steps. They disappeared into the dense trees. He stopped, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. Was she still out there, hiding, watching him? Or had she gone far away, leaving her baby forever? He went back inside. The baby had woken up and was making soft noises. Daniel smiled faintly. He sat down beside it, gently touching its tiny hand. The hum it made grew louder for a moment. It almost felt like the baby was happy he had returned. Later that day, Daniel decided to prepare. If he was going to keep the baby safe, he would need supplies. He drove to a small store in town, buying blankets, baby formula, and a few toys. The woman at the counter raised an eyebrow. "Didn't know you had kids?" she said. Daniel just smiled and replied, "Helping a friend." He didn't want to explain. Not yet. When he returned home, he froze. Something was different. Near the back door, sitting in the snow, was a small crystal-like stone. It glowed faintly in the dim light. Daniel picked it up. Feeling warmth in his hand, he looked around. No footprints this time. Had the mother left it? Was it a gift? A warning? He didn't know, but he placed it on the table beside the couch where the baby slept. That night, as Daniel sat by the fire, the baby suddenly stirred. It reached toward the crystal. Touching it with its tiny fingers, the glow grew brighter. For a moment, the baby let out a soft coo, almost like laughter. Daniel's heart softened. This little one was more than just different. It was special. And he was now the only one standing between it and whatever dangers were out there, he thought. About the searchlights he sometimes saw in the distance. About the strange news reports of unidentified objects in the sky. If they were looking for the mother, they might soon be looking for the baby too. Daniel felt a tight knot in his stomach. He had to be careful, very careful. The baby yawned and curled up in the blanket. Daniel watched it. He could no longer. Imagine giving it away. Somehow, in less than a day, this strange child had become his responsibility. And maybe something more, a reason to protect, to fight, to risk. He made his decision. From that night on, he would protect the baby no matter who came looking outside. The wind howled through the forest, but inside, the small house was warm. Daniel sat near the couch, eyes on the door. He didn't know what the future would bring, but he knew he was ready to face it. The next morning was cold and silent. Daniel woke before sunrise, the pale blue light of early dawn filling his small home. The alien baby, Luma, still slept, curled inside the blanket. Its soft hum was steady, like a gentle heartbeat in the air. Daniel had grown used to that sound, and now he could not imagine the house without it. He poured himself a cup of coffee and stepped outside. Snow crunched under his boots. The air was sharp, freezing his breath into small clouds. He walked to the edge of the porch and looked toward the forest. Something about the trees felt different, like someone had been there recently. He took a few steps forward. That's when he saw them again. Footprints, not human footprints. They were long, narrow, and deep, with pointed tips at the front, the same kind he had seen before. They led away from the house into the woods. His pulse quickened. Daniel glanced back at the door. Should he follow them? What if the baby woke up and he wasn't there? But curiosity pulled him. He grabbed his coat tighter and began to follow the trail. The prints weaved between trees, sometimes vanishing in deeper snow. He noticed something odd. They circled his house before heading back into the woods. Whoever made them had been watching, and Daniel already knew who it was. The alien mother. She hadn't left. She was still here, hiding, watching from the shadows. Daniel stopped walking. The forest around him was completely still. He scanned the trees, searching for movement. But there was nothing, only silence. He slowly turned back toward the house. When he reached the back porch, something caught his eye. Near the steps, half buried in snow, was another crystal, smaller than the first. Its glow was faint but alive. Daniel bent down and picked it up. It was warm, just like the other one. He stood there for a long moment, holding the crystal in his palm. It wasn't random. She was leaving them on purpose. But why? Was it her way of saying thank you? Or was she trying to tell him something? Inside, Luma had woken up. The baby's big blue eyes locked on the crystal the moment Daniel entered. It reached out with tiny hands, humming louder. When Daniel placed the crystal near it, the baby touched it gently. The glow brightened, and for a moment, Daniel swore he saw shapes move inside the stone, like shadows shifting in liquid light. Then it dimmed again. The rest of the day passed quietly. Daniel stayed close to the baby, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was out there. Every so often, he would glance at the window. Once, he thought he saw a shadow move between the trees, too far to be sure, but enough to raise the hair on the back of his neck. That night, just as he was about to sleep, there came a new sound. Not a knock, not a voice. It was soft, like fabric. Brushing against wood, Daniel froze in bed, listening. It came from outside the back door. He grabbed his flashlight and moved quietly through the house. The baby was still sleeping. He opened the back door slowly and shined the light. Snowflakes floated down in the beam. No one was there, but at the edge of the porch, sitting in the snow, was a small piece of cloth. Daniel stepped forward and picked it up. It was rough, torn, and damp from the snow. But when he brought it inside and held it under the light, he could see it was not from earth. The fibers shimmered faintly, changing colors as he moved it. It smelled faintly sweet, like flowers he had never known. This had to belong to her. He placed it on the table beside the two crystals. 3 gifts. Now a pattern, maybe a message, maybe a promise, or maybe a warning. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He sat in the chair near the baby. Listening to the wind outside, the forest felt alive in a way it never had before. Like eyes were always watching, not hostile, but not harmless either. He thought about going into the forest during the day, searching for her. But something told him she would not be found unless she wanted to be. She was surviving out there, alone in the freezing cold, in a place she didn't belong. And yet, she stayed close to her child. Daniel looked at Luma, who was sleeping peacefully. He could imagine what the mother must feel. The fear, the hope, the pain. He understood now. She wasn't gone because she didn't care. She was gone because she was protecting them both. Daniel leaned back in the chair. He didn't know what the crystals meant. He didn't know how long she could survive out there. But he knew one thing. The signs were clear. She wasn't finished with this place or with him. The night was still, but Daniel could not sleep. He sat in his chair near the couch where Luma rested. The baby's hum was softer than usual, almost like it could sense something in the air. Daniel's own heartbeat felt louder than the wind. Outside, then he heard it, a faint rumble far in the distance. At first, he thought it was thunder, but the sound grew deeper, heavier. It wasn't thunder. It was engines. Daniel stood and went to the window over the dark forest. Faint lights moved in the sky. They were not stars. They were too low, too bright. The sound became clearer. Helicopters, not one, but many. Their beams of light cut through the trees, sweeping across the snow like giant searching eyes. His stomach tightened. They were looking for something. He didn't need to guess what or who. He turned back to Luma. The baby was awake now. Eyes wide, hum trembling in pitch. Daniel knelt beside it. It's all right, he whispered, though he knew it wasn't. He could feel the urgency. He had to hide the baby, and fast. He picked Luma up and rushed to the basement. The space was small and cluttered with old furniture and boxes. He cleared a corner behind an old cabinet and set a thick blanket there. It wasn't perfect, but it was hidden from view. He placed Luma gently on the blanket. The baby looked at him with trusting eyes. Daniel forced a small smile. Stay quiet, little one. Upstairs, the low hum of engines was joined by distant voices, shouts, the sound of boots crunching snow. Daniel peeked through the curtains. Dark figures in heavy coats were moving between the trees. Carrying strange devices that blinked with red lights, they were scanning the area. One of the beams passed dangerously close to his house. Daniel's heart pounded. He turned off every light inside and stood completely still. The men moved slowly, their breath steaming in the cold night air. Then, somewhere deeper in the woods, a sharp sound echoed, a branch snapping loudly. The searchlight swung in that direction. Daniel knew instantly what it meant. The mother, she was out there, running, leading them away, risking herself so they wouldn't find the baby. Daniel's fists tightened. He wanted to help. But what could he do without exposing Luma? The voices grew louder, then faded as the group moved away from his property. But the helicopters still hovered above, circling like vultures. Hours passed, the searchlights kept moving over the forest. Daniel stayed near the window, eyes straining. In the dark, once he thought he saw a shadow dart between the trees. Too fast, too smooth to be human. It had to be her. But then the beam caught the movement, and she vanished again, swallowed by the darkness. Finally, near dawn, the helicopters pulled away. The engines faded into the distance. The forest returned to silence. Daniel rushed to the basement. Luma was still there, unharmed. The baby reached for him as soon as he appeared. He picked it up and held it close. Feeling relief flood through him. But relief didn't last. If they were searching this close, they would be back. And next time, they might not miss the house. Daniel knew he needed a plan, and fast. He decided to secure the basement better. He moved heavy furniture in front of the small windows. He gathered food, water, and blankets, enough for days if needed. Every step felt heavier than the last. He wasn't just hiding a child, he was hiding something the whole world might want to capture. Something they might never give back. That evening, as the sun set, Daniel stepped outside for a moment. The snow was disturbed in several places, signs of boots and strange tracks, but there, far at the edge of the trees, he saw something small resting in the snow. He walked toward it cautiously. It was another crystal, this one brighter than the rest. He picked it up and felt warmth pulse in his hand. And then he noticed something else. On the snow beside it, pressed deep, was a handprint long. Slender, not human. She had been here, watching, and maybe she had seen everything. Daniel looked into the forest. It was quiet now, but he knew it wouldn't stay that way. The search was only beginning, and soon he might have to choose between hiding or running. The next day, the forest felt different. Daniel stood on his porch, staring into the endless line of dark trees. The snow lay untouched, but he could feel something in the air, a quiet tension. Luma sat wrapped in a blanket near the window. Eyes wide, watching him, it was almost as if the baby knew something was about to happen. Daniel thought about the night before. The helicopters, the search teams, the strange handprint in the snow. The alien mother was still out there. He was certain she had risked herself to lead the searchers away. And now? He didn't know if she was safe, injured, or even alive. That thought sat heavy in his chest. The baby needed its mother. No matter how much Daniel wanted to protect Luma, he knew he could never replace that bond. And maybe, deep down, he wanted to see her again, too, to understand who she was, to look into her eyes without fear this time. By afternoon, Daniel made his decision. He would go into the forest and find her. The risk was high. The search teams could still be nearby, but waiting might mean losing her forever. He packed carefully water, a flashlight, a thick scarf, and the brightest of the crystals she had left. He didn't know why, but he felt the crystal might help him find her. Before leaving, he knelt by Luma. "I'll be back," he whispered. The baby hummed softly, as if in reply. Daniel stepped into the forest. The snow crunched under his boots. He followed no path. Only his instincts. Hours passed, the cold biting at his fingers and face. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, faintly, he heard it, a soft sound. Almost like the hum Luma made. It came from somewhere ahead, weaving between the trees. Daniel quickened his pace. Following the sound, the crystal in his pocket grew warm. Every step seemed to pull him closer. Finally, he saw movement, a shadow slipping between the trunks. He froze. The figure was tall, thin, moving with both grace and exhaustion. Her steps were slow, uneven. Even from a distance, he could tell she was hurt. "Wait," Daniel called, his voice low but urgent. The figure turned sharply, her glowing eyes locked on him. For a moment, she looked ready to run, but then the crystal in his hand caught the fading light. It glowed brightly, her gaze softened, just slightly. Daniel took a slow step forward. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small device, his phone, from it. He played the recording he had made of Luma's hum. The sound floated through the cold air. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, she stepped toward him. When she came closer, Daniel could see her clearly. Her face was pale and smooth, marked with faint glowing lines like patterns of light under her skin. Her clothing was torn, and one arm hung weakly at her side. Her breathing was heavy, her movements slow. She was barely holding herself together. Daniel raised both hands to show he had no weapon. "Your child is safe," he said softly. "She's with me." The alien mother's expression changed. There was pain in her eyes, but also something else. Hope. He motioned for her to follow. She hesitated, scanning the trees from far away. The faint sound of an engine echoed. Searchers. They were coming back. Daniel stepped closer and spoke. Quickly, if we don't move now, they'll find us both. She seemed to understand with a weak nod. She followed him. The journey back was slow. She moved carefully, sometimes stumbling. Daniel stayed close, catching her arm when she faltered. He noticed her eyes flicking constantly toward the forest edges. Always alert, always searching for danger when they reached the edge of the forest. Daniel stopped her. He pointed to his house just ahead. They dashed the last stretch, snow kicking up behind them once inside. Daniel quickly locked the door. Pulling the curtains shut, Luma's hum filled the room the moment they stepped in. The baby's eyes widened at the sight of her mother. The mother froze for a heartbeat, then moved forward quickly. She knelt beside the couch. Gathering the child into her arms, the hum from both of them grew louder, merging into a soft, beautiful tone. It was more than sound. It felt like the air itself was alive. Daniel stood, quietly, giving them space. The mother closed her eyes, holding the baby close, her glowing patterns pulsing brighter. Luma's small arms wrapped around her neck. For the first time since Daniel had met the baby, he saw it smile. The moment was warm, but short-lived. From outside, faint lights moved between the trees. The searchers had not given up. Daniel's jaw tightened. They would need a new plan, and fast, because now he wasn't protecting just a child anymore. He was protecting them both. The small house was quiet. The alien mother sat on the couch, holding Luma close. Her eyes glowed softly in the dim light, the strange patterns under her skin shifting like ripples in water. Daniel sat in the chair across from them, a cup of untouched coffee in his hands. He didn't want to break the moment. For the first time since the baby arrived, Luma seemed completely at peace. Daniel studied the mother, up close. She was unlike anything he had imagined. Her features were delicate but strong. Her hands long and graceful, yet her clothing was torn. Her body marked with faint scars, signs of a struggle, signs of survival. He wondered what she had gone through before arriving here. The mother looked at him for a long time without speaking. Her gaze was sharp, but not unfriendly. She placed one hand over her chest and spoke a single word in her own language. It was soft and melodic, but Daniel couldn't understand. Still, he repeated the sound as best he could. Her eyes flickered with surprise. She pointed to herself, repeating the word slowly. It was her name. Daniel nodded. Then he pointed to himself. Daniel. Her head tilted slightly, and she repeated his name. It came out softer, smoother, but it was still his name. Then she touched the baby's head, saying another word, Luma. Daniel smiled. Luma, he repeated. The baby's hum rose slightly, as if responding to the sound. From that moment, they began to exchange simple words. Daniel would point at an object, fire, water, door, and she would say something in her language. Then she would point, and he would say the word in English. It was slow, but each hour brought new understanding. Sometimes she would even smile faintly when he got her words right. By the third day, the atmosphere in the house had changed. The tension between them had softened. The mother began helping Daniel with small tasks. She used strange tools from a pouch on her belt to repair a broken lamp. When Daniel turned it on, it shone brighter than before. She also fixed his old radio, though it now picked up strange soft tones that weren't any station he knew. It felt like her presence was quietly shaping the house into something different. At night, they would sit by the fire. Luma would lie between them, sometimes humming, sometimes asleep. Daniel noticed that whenever the mother sang softly in her language, the baby's glow would brighten. The sound was unlike any music he had heard, low, deep notes that seemed to touch the air itself. He wondered if that hum was more than just sound, maybe a way they shared feelings. One evening, as snow fell heavily outside, Daniel tried to ask her how they had come to Earth. Through gestures and the few words they now shared, he pieced together fragments. A crash, fire in the sky, water, darkness. He realized she must have come in a ship that was now gone or destroyed. She made a motion with her hands, showing something. Breaking apart, her voice dropped when she spoke of it. He could feel the weight of loss in her tone. Daniel didn't push for more. He knew some wounds were too fresh to reopen, but inside, his mind kept racing. If her ship had crashed, maybe. Others had survived, or maybe. Others were looking for her. Not all of them might be friendly. The days passed quietly. Daniel kept watch whenever he could, checking for signs of the searchers. The mother seemed to sense danger. Before it came, her eyes would narrow. Her body would tense. Sometimes she would stand near the window for long minutes. Scanning the trees, she never wandered far now. It was as if she had accepted that this house was a safe place. For now, one morning, Daniel woke to find her in the kitchen. She was trying to copy something he had done, boiling water for tea. The pot was tilted awkwardly, but she smiled when he showed her the right way. It was a small thing, but it felt huge. They were no longer just strangers protecting the same child. They were starting to share a life. That night, as Luma slept, Daniel sat by the fire with her again. For the first time, she looked directly into his eyes and placed her hand on his arm. Her skin was warm, almost humming with a faint energy. She spoke slowly in her language. Daniel didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. It was gratitude and trust. Outside, the snowstorm grew stronger. The wind howled against the windows, but inside, the little house was warm. The three of them sat together. And for a moment, Daniel allowed himself to believe they might be safe. Snow still covered the ground, thick and unbroken. The storm from the night before had left the world quiet. Daniel stood at the window, watching his breath fog the glass. Behind him, the fire crackled softly, filling the room with warmth. Luma was curled up in her mother's arms, both of them asleep, their hums blending together in a soft, steady rhythm. For a moment, it almost felt like life had settled, like they could stay here forever, safe and hidden. But Daniel knew better. Safety was fragile. And in a world where strangers were searching the woods with helicopters and scanners, forever was not an option. He walked to the table and picked up the 3 crystals the mother had left before. They glowed faintly in his palm. He still didn't know their purpose. Were they gifts, messages, tools? Something about the way the mother always looked at them made him think they were important. Very important. That afternoon, Daniel decided to check the edge of the forest. He didn't tell the mother he didn't want her to worry, but as soon as he stepped outside, he noticed them footprints. Not hers this time. These were heavier, wider, made by boots, and they were fresh. His stomach tightened. The searchers had been here again. Too close, too soon. He hurried back to the house. The mother was awake now, her eyes immediately narrowing at his expression. She could read his face without words. Danger? They began to prepare without speaking. Daniel gathered food, blankets, and water. The mother wrapped Luma in her warmest cloth. Her movements were quick but calm. She had done this before. She knew what it meant to leave quickly. Before they could finish, the sound came. Engines, not far this time. The low hum of helicopters vibrated in the air. Daniel ran to the window. Lights were cutting through the trees, moving directly toward them. There was no more time. Basement? Daniel whispered sharply. They moved fast. Daniel pushed aside the heavy furniture blocking the basement door. The mother slipped inside with Luma. Daniel followed, pulling the door shut just as beams of light swept across the windows above. In the basement, the air was cold. They crouched together behind the old cabinet. Daniel's heart pounded. He could hear the crunch of boots in the snow above, muffled voices, the metallic click of equipment. Someone was at the door. The handle rattled. Then, a loud knock. Daniel held his breath. The mother's arms tightened around Luma. The baby stayed silent, but its glow brightened under the blanket. Daniel covered it with his coat, praying the light wouldn't leak out. Minutes passed like hours. Then footsteps moved away. The sound of voices grew fainter. Finally, the engine noise returned. The helicopters were leaving. For now, they stayed hidden until the silence felt real. When they finally came up, the snow outside was marked with deep tracks leading back into the forest. The searchers had been close, too close. It was only luck they hadn't entered. That night, none of them slept. The mother sat by the fire with Luma. Humming softly, Daniel sat across from them, watching the flames. He knew they couldn't stay here much longer. But the thought of leaving his home twisted inside him. Still, there was no other choice. In the morning, the mother approached him. She placed one of the crystals in his hand. Her eyes met his. She spoke slowly in her language. Daniel couldn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Trust, family. He looked at her, at Luma, and felt something deep in his chest. When they had first come to his door, he had been a stranger. Now, they were something else. Not just people, not just allies, but a family. A strange one, maybe an impossible one, but real. They packed quietly as the sun rose. Daniel took only what they could carry: food, water, clothes, the 3 crystals, and a few tools. He looked back at the house one last time. The small, wooden home that had been his safe place for years now felt like part of a story that was ending. He locked the door, knowing he might never see it again. They stepped into the forest together. The snow was deep, the air sharp. But they walked side by side. Daniel carried one bag. The mother carried Luma. Every now and then, the baby would hum softly. Ah! The sound keeping them moving, somewhere far. Behind, the world was still looking for them, but out here, in the quiet, white forest. They moved as one, not human, not alien, just a small family trying to survive. And for the first time in days, Daniel felt something new. Not fear, not doubt, but hope. If you'd like, I can now combine all 7 parts into one single continuous script, so it's ready for your